this is Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what the differences are between buying a car for cash, financing a car with payments, or leasing a car. This is a question that comes up pretty often. People are always curious. Leasing maybe gets a bad rap. Sometimes it works really well if you're a business owner and you need to write off and things like that. And so we're going to kind of talk about 3 different ways to purchase the same car. So the example I'm going to use is if I were to walk into, say, a Toyota dealer and buy a brand new Toyota Camry, I'm going to use $30,000 as my sale price. Okay, so maybe I negotiate it or whatever, but $30,000 is going to be the cost of this vehicle. So if I have 100 grand in the bank, okay, I take $30,000 and I pay cash for that car. Now I owe nobody anything, right? I own that car. I get the pink slip handed to me. They hand me the keys. I can drive away, and that car is mine, clean and clear. I do not owe anybody for that car. Okay, but now I have $70,000 in the bank. So, simple math on that: 100,000 less 30,000 to buy the car. I'm left with $70,000. Okay, so let's move forward and say I finance that vehicle. Well, for simple math, let's assume a 4% interest rate. So if I buy a $30,000 car over 60 months, which is 5 years, my monthly payment maybe varies a little bit, but it's around $500. So let's say, you're putting 10% down and you've got reasonable credit. So roughly $500 per month. So now I've got 100 grand in the bank, less 10% down. So let's call it $3,000. I still have $97,000 in the bank, but I owe the bank $500 a month for the next 60 months, okay? Once you factor in interest and all that stuff, I'm not gonna do the math, but let's assume it's around $35,000. So now that car has cost you $35,000, right? Maybe you made $32,000 in payments, plus your $3,000 of down payment, totals $35,000 over 5 years. The thing to consider there, and when you pay cash for a car, is the moment you drive off the lot, it depreciates a bunch. A $30,000 car, if I bought it brand new today and tried to sell it tomorrow, I'd be lucky to get mid 20,000, 25,000. In all reality, I would probably get 22, 23, 24 to the right buyer. But if I traded it back into the dealer, they're going to give me probably 20,000 for it, right? They're going to take a 33% hit in one day just by driving it off the lot, and them changing the title to you does diminish the value some. So if I pay cash for that $30,000 car and it's really only worth 25 the next day, there you go. So if I'm making payments on that car, yes, the value the value depletes the moment I drive off the lot. But I haven't paid that, right? I'm still making payments. So I'm actually really upside down in that car because my payout or my payoff is going to be whatever's left, $27,000 plus some interest. And if I can only sell it for 23 or 24, I'm actually $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 negative in equity. And, that kind of sucks, but I've got $97,000 in the bank. So conceptually, right, multiple streams of income is what people are reaching for today. And so if you've got money in the bank that's sitting idle and it's not working for you, paying cash for that car is not a terrible thing. But if you've got that money invested earning 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10%, then leasing at 3 or 4%, if you've got good credit, is actually an okay way to go, right? Your interest that you're making on the $97,000 is greater than what the interest is costing you on that $30,000 loan. So you want to leverage your dollars as best as you can. And if the bank is willing to front the risk and give you that money for that car, great. What happens if you quit making payments? Well, they're going to come repossess that car, and then they're going to take it back to the dealership, and then they're going to recondition it and sell it. And so, not a lot of risk for the dealership, but again, your credit and all those other things will get hurt by you not fulfilling your end of the agreement. So the third approach is going to be leasing. Now, leasing, again, gets a very bad rap. You're kind of throwing money away. It's not something that you're ever going to own. It's a glorified lease or a glorified rental when you're leasing a car. So again, using that $30,000 Toyota Camry, the way they factor the lease is they're going to say, okay, well, you're going to get 36,000 miles or less. If you've got 10 or 12,000 miles a year, we're going to assume that in 3 years, when you bring that car back to us, it's going to have depreciated by, let's say 33%, just for easy numbers. So they're going to say that the car is going to be worth $20,000 in 3 years. So the difference between the purchase price of 30 and the depreciated value at the end of the lease, 20, the difference there is $10,000. So the way they do that is they'll take that $10,000 divided out by 36 months. Okay, we're going to round to $300 a month. It's going to be a little less than that, but $300 a month. So now you pay that $300 a month. If you don't pay it, same thing. They come, they repossess the car, they take it back to the dealership, and the dealership gets the car back and they do what they need to do to sell it. If you continue to make that payment at the end of 36 months, you get back in that car, you drive down to the dealership, you get out, you hand them the keys, and you drive off. Or you can then renegotiate a purchase price of that car. You can buy it for the $20,000 that's left on the lease, and whatever. Then it can work out to win in your favor if, let's say, the car is worth $24,000. Let's say it didn't depreciate as fast as they thought it would, and they based it on a $20,000 value, and it's actually worth $24,000. Now you can buy that car at the $20,000 that you still owe on it, and then turn around and sell it the next day for $24,000, and you just made $4,000 back on what you just paid over the course of that lease. The other thing you can do is also, when you're in a lease, you're limited in what you can do to the car, right? So the dealership generally wants to be the ones to service it. They generally want to be the one to do inspections and oil changes and air filter changes and all those things, because they need to make sure you're taking care of their car, because you do not own it. The dealership or the bank does still. So you're going to be a little bit limited in those aftermarket accessories. You can put wheels on it, but then you have to pull them off when you take the car back for the lease. You can, in some leases, window tint, right? That's not something that's easily removable, but it is something that generally the next buyer is not going to care. So you can tint the windows on a car on a brand new lease and generally return that without any negative implications. When you get into a higher end lease, that's where a lot of professionals think that that's where you make your money back. So if you're leasing like a Lamborghini, Ferrari, Rolls Royce, whatever, your lease might be $2,500 a month. But if you were to finance that car, $300,000 car over 60 months, you're like $5,000 a month in car payments. So you can reduce your monthly outflow of cash to lease a car. And if your mentality is only, I'm going to keep it 2 or 3 years, and then I want the latest and the greatest, and I want something new, and you're going to kind of churn through those cars, maybe a lease works. But for the average person, unless the payment makes or breaks it, buying the car is going to be better, because you can drive it for as many miles as you want, right? No cap. You can modify it however you want, right? You're not going to give the car back in 3 years or 36,000 miles. And you have the flexibility of, driving it for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and then selling it if you choose to. And that $30,000 car, if you sold it in 5 years for $20,000, okay, this circles back to the last episode or 2 episodes ago of cost and price. If I buy a car for $30,000, sell it in 5 years for $20,000, that only cost me $2,000 a month to drive that, $2,000 a year to drive that car, right? 5 years times $2,000 a year is $10,000, which is the difference between my purchase price of $30,000 and my sale price of $20,000. So if I divide $2,000 by 12 months, we're talking less than $200 a month it cost me to drive that car, which is more than that lease, right? We talked about that lease being about $300 a month. And so again, cost versus price is really important when it comes down to leasing. Just to kind of recap that, if I were to buy the car, I might have a $500 a month payment for 5 years. If I lease it, we're talking $300 a month for 5 years or 3 years. I give the car back at the end of that. So I'm just out that money, whatever it is. And in that case, it was $10,000 over those 3 years. But if I chose to keep it and buy it and drive it for 5 years, so that means I get 2 extra years of use, okay? Now I sell it and it's worth $20,000, but I've got the title in hand because I've paid for the 5 years that I owed the money on. So I've got the title in hand, I sell the car for 20, 30 minus 10, I'm sorry, 30 minus 20 is $10,000. Is that right? The 10,000 divided by the 5 years is 2,000 a year, which equals less than $200 a month. So buying it again comes out ahead, even though you've got more money out of pocket every month for those 5 years. At the end, you recouped more. Does that make sense? I hope so. When we, again, fast forward to, let's say, a higher end exotic of some sort, cost versus price really matters, because here we go again. So if I've got that 100,000 in the bank and I want to go buy a supercar, let's say my supercar is $300,000 and I want my payment to be as little as possible. So I take that entire 100,000 and put it towards that $300,000 car. I'm now financing 200,000 over 60 or 72 months or whatever the case may be. And we're talking, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, depending on interest rates, depending on how much you put down and all those things. If I lease it, I sign on the dotted line and I know that that car is only going to cost me $2,000 a month. Cost me $2,000 a month for the next 24 or 36 months, depending on what the negotiation is. At the end of that lease, again, I take that supercar back to the dealership. I either buy it or return it, and I'm done. This is where it gets a little creative. So sometimes, we talked about this, sometimes those supercars depreciate for a couple of years and then appreciate. So sometimes this makes a lot of sense. You can finance a car or lease the car with no money out of pocket or a very little amount down and smaller monthly payments. And they're going to take the depreciation. So let's use that $300,000 car. They might think that that car is going to depreciate down to, say, $220,000. Okay, so an $80,000 depreciation. And let's say we do a 36-month lease. That's $2,300, $2,200 a month for 3 years, or 2-3 years. But let's say that car does depreciate to $220,000. The lease is up, and again, you can take the car back to the dealership, or you have the right to buy it, or you have the right to sell it too. You can sell it anytime through your lease. They're going to give you what that payoff amount is. So again, I mean, if they're saying today's sale price is $300,000, depreciation is $220,000, it has a depreciation schedule. So they can tell you, 17 months in, we're down to $257,911. I could sell that car for $280,000 and pocket the difference. So when a depreciated supercar is coming up on the lease end, many times that thing has already hit the bottom of the depreciation curve, or it's really, really close. And so there's been instances where folks that lease these cars haven't fallen down. I might have a car that's worth $250,000, but the lease ends at $220,000. I have $30,000 in equity. Why wouldn't I try to figure out a way to capture that 30 for myself, right? Then I can put it in the bank with my 100 over here. And I've driven a supercar for free, right? Because now I'm getting paid out at the end, all the equity, and maybe not for free. It depends on costs and incentives and those other things. But, if you do the math, right, really dive into the numbers, there are ways that you can kind of use a lease to your advantage. There's tax benefits if you're a business owner, if it's used for business expenses and, business mileage and all those things. That's great. That's really great. If you can use that to your advantage, do it. If you can't and you just want a supercar for the sake of wanting a supercar, sometimes the lease is better than, again, financing, because you don't have that huge monthly payment and you still have the flexibility of having equity, right? So a supercar is kind of a different animal. If you've got the cash, pay cash, because again, you're going to eat the depreciation the first couple of years, but if you hang on to it, most often those things level out, quit depreciating. Even if they never do appreciate up, you're not likely to continue to lose money. So you just keep driving it and enjoying it. And that's where your money goes. But, circling back to that Toyota, if I want to modify a car, leasing may not be for me, right? I think that buying a car is 9 times out of 10 going to be better for you than leasing. You might have to finance those dollars. You might not if you've got them in the bank. But again, the other key to all this is making sure those dollars in the bank are working for you. So that $100,000 I mentioned early on, if I'm earning 8 or 10% on that money, right, after just a few years, it's going to have grown faster than the interest I'm paying on the car payment. And if I work my numbers right, I can take my 100 grand. If I can earn, let's say 7%, that's $7,000 a year in interest. And my car payment, let's say, is $500 a month. The 7 grand is more than enough to pay for the car. So again, you can kind of use your interest income or dividend income to pay that car payment. And then at the end of those 5 years, you own the car outright. Now you've got a paycheck of $7,000 a year coming in. You've got a free car that's paid for, and it still has some value. It's something to consider, right? And so now I'm not encouraging anybody to run out and buy a new car. I'm certainly not encouraging anybody to run out and lease a supercar. So please take this information for what it is. If you have questions or concerns or want to dive in deeper and use specific numbers for your certain circumstance, please, please, please shoot me an email, comment down below. I'm really happy to work with you guys on some of this stuff. And these concepts really aren't new, but I think that they're taken for granted. A lot of people just see the TV ad for, lease a Honda for $199 a month, and they think, well, crap, I can't afford a $400 a month car payment, so that's a pretty good deal. Yeah, on the surface, it might be. It might look super attractive, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right deal or the right deal for you. You really need to take your overall financial picture into consideration whenever you're making a purchase for a vehicle, whether it's a $10,000 car or a $1 million car, whether you have $10 in the bank or $1 million in the bank. These principles apply across the board. So just because you're a millionaire, please don't think you're exempt or unable to use a lot of these concepts, because you really, really are. You can leverage those dollars in such a way that they benefit you. If you don't have any money and you need a car, that's another problem, right? But again, same thing. You can leverage your good credit. You can leverage what, we can talk, we can work things through so that, we figure out how you can benefit the best. And maybe it is get into a lease. Maybe that helps establish credit or helps, keep a newer car in your life that allows you to get from A to B, if you need to commute to and from work. Sometimes that just makes sense too, but realize what you're getting into. And I think that's the bottom line is, people don't always understand leases. They don't always understand what they're signing or how it works or what happens at the end of the lease and how you get out. Can you get out throughout the thing? There's a number of questions that come up. So it's different for every single person. So I would strongly encourage you to talk to somebody, whether it's me, whether it's your banker, your own financial advisor, whoever it is. Ask questions, get answers. Make sure you understand what you're doing. So thanks for watching. I always, always, always appreciate you and your feedback. Please comment down below, like, subscribe, and as always, may every investment you make be a good one.